Namaste and greetings. I, Aswash Mahanta, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, New Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to all of you to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today, we are gathered here for day one of a 3-day immersive online certificate training course on India's G20 Presidency and contours of Indian foreign policy. This training program is organized by the Center for International Relations and Strategic Studies, CIRSS, IMPRI. At the very outset, let me give you a brief background on the training course. India took over the G20 presidency on December 1st, 2022 from accounts for about 80% of the world's GDP, 60% of the population, and a large chunk of global trade. Proving its prowess, especially during the 2008 global financial crisis. Keeping the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family, one future, at its core, the country has embarked on a rather ambitious journey at times when the world is still grappling with the Russia-Ukraine crisis, fraught with inflation and an impending recession, with financial and geopolitical tensions heightening. The challenge of steering this tumultuous presidency is an opportunity in disguise for India to shape, influence, and gravitate global priorities and policies towards the discourses of utmost need, such as women-led development and multilateral reforms. It is the time to revisit the traditional ways of multilateral decision-making and call for structural changes, thereby allowing more voices in global reforms. On the other hand, the presidency also is a moment to adapt our foreign policy in consonance with the ever-changing realist world in light of the normative values and resonate the same to advance our national interests. This course will dabble with questions such as what are the non-tangible contingent gains India can make, how the presidency could be harnessed to further our national interests, how strategically significant the presidency is with a belligerent China near our doors. Along with insightful discussions on the complexity of the multilateral reforms and the forum, its footprints on Indian foreign policy, opportunity, and the way forward. The purpose of this course is to postulate a general understanding of the G20 as a working body and take a deeper dive into the Indian presidency. Furthermore, its effects on Indian foreign policy, keeping the tumultuous global political and financial atmosphere in mind. This program has an excellent panel of experts who will be conducting this course for the next 3 days. This distinguished panel includes, in no particular order, Ambassador Shashank, Captain Alok Bansal, Ms. Nandita Borua, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, Professor Sanjay Chaturvedi, Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya, Mr. Don McLean Gill, Dr. Parama Sinha Palit, and Professor Annapurna Nautiyal. This course will be convened and moderated by Dr. Simi Mehta, CEO and Editorial Director at IMPRI. I welcome you all to this enlightening session and thank you for putting your time, energy, and efforts to truly understand issues surrounding India's G20 presidency and the contours of India's foreign policy. Before we start today's session, I would like to announce the housekeeping rules once again. It is imperative that you join the meeting on time. There will be a question and answer session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box and not on the chat box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise. refrain from making general comments in the questions to save time. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite our moderator, Dr. Simi Mehta, to start the session with her opening remarks. Looking forward to learning from our esteemed gathering. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ashwas, and good evening to all the participants and our esteemed experts this evening. It is my proud privilege to be hosting this important web policy learning during a time, as Ashwas has mentioned, that the country is passing through and the entire world is passing through tumultuous times. However, the broad objectives of India's foreign policy clearly remains that we have an autonomous foreign policy, and we always aim to develop and nurture friendly relations with all the countries of the world. So without any further ado, let me invite Dr. Parama Sinha Palit, who is joining us from Singapore, to begin with her lecture. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you all of you for organizing this extremely relevant workshop at a time when India is hosting the G20 summit. I'm sure all of us will learn a lot from this 3-day workshop with all the panelists bringing their expertise to the table. So let me begin. Let me share the screen. Is it okay? Yeah. So let me begin my presentation, which you can see is about India's social media-driven public diplomacy and its brand building efforts. The presentation also contains 2 videos, which I have used to highlight India's communication with the world, with the global audiences using social media. While the presentation highlights how digital media has forced public diplomacy to become more public-oriented, it primarily focuses on India's brand-building activities, emphasizing how the Indian leadership is utilizing its G20 presidency to brand itself. So before I continue, let me quickly define public diplomacy, which I'm sure all of you are well aware of. So what is public diplomacy? Simply put, it is the government's engagement with the foreign public to influence them in the nation's national interest. So please note, and I'm emphasizing foreign public. Let me continue. Like I just mentioned, while the old public diplomacy focused on the foreign public, a major development of this polymedia ecology is the inclusion of the domestic public in public diplomacy. So while public diplomacy historically has meant you engaging with the foreign publics, but now with the polymedia, in this very, very social media driven environment, you see the domestic constituency, the domestic citizens are also part of the public diplomacy narrative. Their views, perceptions have become increasingly important for the leaders now. Since 2015, the Indian government has taken important steps in developing its social media assets. According to reports in 2017, not only has the Indian government developed separate handles for each of the union ministries and ministers, but it has also been using these handles to reach out to the public with its development-oriented agenda and information about many of its social welfare schemes, and thereby convey the idea of a new India to the online public, both domestic and otherwise. Some of the union ministers have also used social media to personally reach out to Indian citizens within and outside who are in need of help, thereby making themselves more accountable and responsive. So, this is all because of the preponderance, the prevalence of social media in political communication. The use of social media has also made governance less secretive while many argue that leadership control has diminished. This point is debatable as we see leaders are becoming more and more controlling of the platforms as well. They not only try to curb its flow and exchanges, but also try to influence public perceptions by providing a direction to online discourses that suits their party's objectives. But here I would also like to highlight the role of the ordinary people who post and tweet fake news, often inadvertently, but often deliberately too. However, this is not the focus of my presentation today. So I shall stay away from this topic, which is both intriguing and fascinating at the same time. Now let us go to the next slide. And in this slide, I will talk about how the government of India has adopted social media to communicate with the digital public. Twitter, Facebook, and the likes have been aggressively employed by political parties and their leaders to broadcast information on a worldwide stream, not just to their subscribers, but to anybody who wants to join any ongoing debates and discussions. However, these remain more or less a one-way traffic, or what you call a unidirectional most of the time. So these conversations are unidirectional. What is interesting is that the same broadcast changes to a two-way interaction with the public during political processes and electoral campaigns. But then these tendencies are noticed not only in India, but across the world, across other countries as well. Another major function of the digital tools has been to brand build countries and communicate their positive brands internationally. This brand building exercise has been heavily inspired by the principles of marketing and public relations and is undertaken by all the countries, whether the US or China. This presentation, of course, focuses on India's brand building activities using social media platforms. So competing on the social media marketplace requires that the national brand communicates on global and regional events as they unfold on the ground. This is because the digital public wants to learn about events as they occur. Events and policies must be incorporated into the brand to ensure their consistent narration. In other words, events must be interpreted and presented through the values and norms to which a nation adheres. The ongoing G20 summit in India is an excellent example in this regard. We will discuss this towards the end of the presentation. Consistent narration is necessary as national images are cognitive schemas that take time to change or take shape. As you can see in this slide, I have outlined 3 major points. And the third point has more additional sub-points under it. So first of all, treating nation states as products, it emphasizes that branding gives products and services an emotional dimension that people, including the diaspora, can identify with, making states brand states, while geography and politics becomes trivial compared with the brand's emotional resonance among a global audience of consumers. Furthermore, maintaining a global reputation in tandem with economic growth is also an imperative with modern nation states striving to counterbalance historical rivalries. This is particularly salient in the digital age as countries compete to influence the global information environment for improving brand images, for attracting tourists, trade, and investment. So you have a country like the evil empire, Russia, trying to brand build itself. You have a country like South Africa trying to brand build itself. You have a small country like Sri Lanka trying to brand itself. So all modern digitized digital countries are trying hard to communicate with the world, with the other countries, with the other foreign public, to tell them, to narrate to them that they are attractive and they should, the other countries should go and invest in them, go and visit them as tourists. So this is, like I've said, particularly salient in the digital age. A country with a bad brand or reputation may not be attractive enough for tourists and investments. In fact, PR scholars examining public diplomacy argue that without branding, it is almost impossible to attract investments, tourists, and companies, expand exports, and reach higher standards of living. So nation branding has therefore become a national priority, and managing relationships has gradually emerged a central paradigm. So how is India communicating its brand? So you can see the boxes. India is prominently building its brand utilizing the digital media. The goal is to project its strengths, whether economic, cultural, or its status as a major player in world politics. In fact, the G20 presidency has provided India an opportunity to promote itself internationally. I will specifically focus on G20 after a little while. Well, now the next few slides will reflect India's communication of its strengths as listed in this slide and as it wants the international community to perceive it. So it wants to project by projecting its economic strength, leadership role, responsibility as a major player, strong cultural sector, strong connections with the diaspora, and of course, the G20 presidency is providing it with an opportunity to do so. So when we say economic strength, then we have one or two slides, then you have India's leadership role, another one or two slides, and this is how it goes on, the next few slides. So here you can see the slide shows India's strength as an economic power and its ability to attract investments and foreign companies in its shores. So you have Singapore Airlines, you have Google, you have Apple, you have Samsung, and many others coming to India with their investments. The next slide is Make in India campaign, which is also an economic self-reliance program. In 2014, Modi's flagship Make in India was an effort to brand India by highlighting its attractiveness as an investment destination and for luring global businesses. Not only did Make in India become popular on social media, adding a new member every 3 seconds on its Facebook page and thereby becoming the most sought after government initiative ever on a digital media platform. The Wall Street Journal also evaluated the program favorably a year after its launch, citing a surge in inward foreign direct investment into India. It was also a campaign that was seen to be catching fire by Forbes. Now, this slide conveys India's, there will be a video shown to you. It's a very short video, and it will convey India's heft as a major player in the international system. The video shows Prime Minister Modi with US President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada at G20 Summit in Germany last year, exchanging greetings. This video is another example with a message targeting its audience that Modi and hence India is an important power amongst many other advanced countries like the US and Canada. Can we have the video, please? The video?
It's playing, ma'am.
I can't see it.
Share.
Yeah, now I can see it. So here you can see Prime Minister Modi, exchanging greetings with his counterparts. And this is Germany last year. Yeah, you can That's it. I think you can stop the video now. Okay. Okay. Now you have Operation Ganga, which took place last year. So what is this about? What is the message? Communicating effectively during crisis. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, how will I go back now? Okay. Communicating effectively during crisis influences a nation's global brand and reputation. These assistance and initiatives during disasters and conflicts not only help global reputations of countries, but is done for elevating its prestige and reputation worldwide. India has been trying to do just that. So positioning social media as a successful crisis communication public diplomacy tool, the Ministry of External Affairs launched a dedicated Twitter handle activating Op Ganga helpline to evacuate the Indian students stranded in Ukraine during the Russia-Ukraine conflict in 2022, establishing Twitter once again as a crisis communication tool. This evacuation was not one of its kind.
Again, the screen has stopped, no? So please share it again.
Oh.
Bottom green, but share screen and then PPT. Yeah.
Oh, wait. Well, I've lost it now.
Come back to Zoom. Share. Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
So do I do this slide again or it's okay? I can move ahead.
Yes, ma'am, up to you. No problem.
Okay. So the evacuation was not one of its kind, and India had previously engaged in similar efforts, like in 2015 during the Yemeni crisis. Op Ganga was not just to rescue stranded Indians alone, but other countries' students as well. And see, you have Bangladesh, Nepal, even Pakistan thanking India for its rescue missions during the time. This, yet again, positions India as a responsible power in the bloc, which believes in reaching out and assisting others, especially during crisis. This one is, again, you can see our Prime Minister with other leaders, world leaders. In fact, the one on the right shows India at the Quad last year in Tokyo. This photo of the Prime Minister had gone viral, showing him as a leader leading from the front. And I quote here, leading from the front. So just imagine the meeting at which there were discussions about maritime security, strengthening the Indo-Pacific region with an eye on China. What actually happened was the message that was communicated to the targeted audience was India's position as a leader of the Quad. According to a tweet of a union minister, the photo reflected the power of Hindustan, the person of Narendra Modi. We all have, struggled and battled the COVID-19, and India was smart enough to leverage the pandemic to exert its leadership. The crisis was sensed by India as an opportunity for fostering greater regional collaboration. Modi, in keeping with his social media savvy image, reached out to his regional counterparts to fight the disease together. India was hailed by the US-based Foreign Policy magazine as an attempt to position, again I quote here, India as a leader in crafting global responses to the coronavirus, even while attempting to combat it at home, close quote. The attempt was also to apply Modi's tech savviness in social media and video conferencing to score diplomatic advantages. Subsequently, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC, the Non-Aligned Movement, NAM, and the G20 were all planned and implemented digitally, aimed for crafting global responses for managing the virus together. with India posing as a leader. It is not just about conveying India, as a major power, but also to place its cultural sources in the world map while engaging with the foreign public and the diaspora. The effort is to make India proud and stand above the rest. With respect to yoga, India was very keen to raise awareness worldwide of many benefits of practicing yoga and showed its enthusiasm to share it with the international community. The UN recognized its universal appeal in December 2014 and proclaimed 21st June as the International Day of Yoga. So you see how India has been trying to place the country in the world map, whether it is with respect to its culture, it could be yoga, it could be dance performances, it would be some cultural week, like, I had shown you in the last slide. So you see the dance performances. This is in Indonesia. All these kind of, cultural sources are being shown, are being demonstrated, exhibited to the people in foreign lands to get appreciation, to get recognition, to place India on the world map as far as its culture is concerned. And while we have already discussed how India has also been promoting itself as a leader in the world. Now you see, placing India in the world map and communicating its confidence has acquired immense traction under Prime Minister Modi. In fact, mega events like the Howdy Modi was in 2019 was not only deployed for stirring up excitement around it amongst the diaspora, but was successfully used to showcase Modi as a world leader, comfortably sharing the same stage with the US President Donald Trump, projecting influence and power. It was telecast live on Modi's official YouTube channel and other social media platforms, and was even seen trending on Twitter, targeting the domestic constituency as well. As I had pointed out when I had begun my presentation, that the new public diplomacy has placed the domestic public within the public diplomacy framework as well, making them equally important for network leaders in democracies and even illiberal countries to communicate with and convey their confidence and influence at the world stage. Cultivating the diaspora, given their emotional attachment to their parent country, has also been central in the practice of public diplomacy. And India is no exception in this regard. In fact, Modi's victory in 2014 and 2019 was contributed to by the large Indian diaspora, who were skillfully cultivated deploying social media platforms, and who made Modi a part of the winning, and I quote here, a part of the winning narrative of the Hindu diaspora in particular. So communicating India's strength, its power, its influence with them is regarded critical for the government. The Aam Aadmi Party is another political party which connects very strongly with the diaspora. In the next few slides, I focus now on how India is trying to brand build itself, utilizing its G20 presidency and the kind of narratives it is trying to direct. The video that you will see captures India's presidency of the G20, a group of the world's largest economies. Look at this, see this video very carefully and see how skillfully India is communicating its presidency to the international community. I want you to make notes of whatever strikes you the most in the video from a branding perspective, meaning how is India trying to brand itself using the G20 summit? You have to give me some lead sentences and words from the video. Can we have the video now, please?
Yes, ma'am, you can stop the share. Yeah.
Okay.
The G20 finance ministers and central bank governors in India. Your meeting marks the first ministerial level dialogue under India's G20 presidency. Even as I convey my best wishes to you for a productive meeting, I am aware of the challenges you face. You represent the leadership of global finance and economy at a time when the world is facing serious economic difficulties. The COVID pandemic has delivered a once-in-a-century blow to the global economy. Many countries, especially developing economies, are still coping with its after effects. We are also witnessing rising geopolitical tensions in different parts of the world. There are disruptions in global supply chains. Many societies are suffering due to rising prices, and food and energy security have become major concerns across the world. Even the financial viability of many countries is threatened by unsustainable debt levels. Trust in international financial institutions has eroded. This is partly because they have been slow to reform themselves. It is now up to you, the custodians of the leading economies and monetary systems of the world, to bring back stability, confidence, and growth to the global economy. It is not an easy task. However, I hope that you will draw inspiration from the vibrancy of the Indian economy. Indian consumers and producers are optimistic and confident about the future. We hope that you will be able to transmit the same positive spirit to the global economy. I would urge that your discussions should focus on the most vulnerable citizens of the world. Only by creating an inclusive agenda will the global economic leadership win back the confidence of the world. The theme of our G20 presidency also promotes this inclusive vision. One earth, one family, one future. Excellencies, even as the world population has crossed 8 billion, progress on sustainable development goals seems to be slowing down. We need to collectively work to strengthen multilateral development banks for meeting global challenges like climate change and high debt levels. Excellencies, in the world of finance, technology is increasingly dominant. During the pandemic, digital payments enable contactless and seamless transactions. However, some recent innovations in digital finance also pose risk of destabilization and misuse. I hope that you will explore how the power of technology can be used for good while developing standards to regulate its possible risks. India's own experience can be a model. Over the past few years, we have created a highly secure, highly trusted, and highly efficient public digital infrastructure. Our digital payments ecosystem has been developed as a free public good. This has radically transformed governance, financial inclusion, and ease of living in India. As you are meeting in Bangalore, the technology capital of India, you will have first-hand experience of how Indian consumers have embraced digital payments. In fact, during our G20 presidency, we have created a new system. This allows our G20 guests to use India's path-breaking digital payment platform, UPI. As you make use of it and experience its ease of use, you will understand why Indian consumers have adopted it so willingly. Examples like UPI can be templates for many other countries too. We would be happy to share our experience with the world. And the G20 can be a vehicle for this. Excellencies, I once again thank you all for your participation in this important meeting and wish you all the best for very productive and successful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing it. Is there anybody who would like to, jump in and tell me what do you think? What is the kind of communication? What is our Prime Minister trying to convey to the participants who have come for the G20? Can you give me some clues, some words that our Prime Minister has used from a branding perspective? Is there anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Abhinav Sharma from JNU.
Hi, Abhinav.
Yeah. Hello, ma'am. It's a pleasure to listen to you. What I got, ma'am, is that Mr. Modi, our Prime Minister, is trying to convey to the world when he says how nicely the Indian consumers have adapted to the digital embracement.
Absolutely.
So he's kind of telling the whole world that, look, over here we have a market. And through G20, we can give you further insights into how our public is embracing digitally everything. So come and invest and just get ahead with business. Business is on. This is what Mr. Modi ji is trying to say, as far as I get.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Abhinav. I think you have hit it on the nail, right on the head of the nail. You're absolutely correct. This is, so you can understand, this is branding. How he's trying to brand India as a market-friendly country, as an investment-friendly country. Anybody else?
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Yes. Hello, my name is Pratishta, And what I feel out of this lecture session was that he was trying to imply on the digital public infrastructure or public digital infrastructure, mentioning about the
Good, yes.
instances of UPI, for say, and also telling the world about our digital financial inclusion, where we have used high-tech technology to
Yes,
secure the
excellent.
channels.
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
think that was the only way to brand the nation into the foreign diaspora and understanding that how India can achieve the impossible feat in terms of bringing DPIs or maybe secure financial transactions or channels
Right.
for the same.
Very good. Yes, absolutely. Anybody else?
We have Vibhaji.
Yes. Anybody else wants to jump in? Nobody else? Come on. He's talked about one earth, one family, one future. So, he's emphasizing India, how, welcoming we are, and we believe the world is our family. So again, culture, trying to brand India culturally. He's also talked about vibrancy of Indian economy. So again, he's trying to project our strength as an economic, with strong economic fundamentals. So these are.
This is also important. He
Sorry?
also focused on inclusion.
Yes, of course.
Not forgetting the vulnerable.
So yes, absolutely, Sami. Thank you very much. And he is emphasizing on inclusion, global good, India's position as the voice of the South, which is very, very important. Indicate India's, ambitions to be a major player. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Yeah. So a major player in the international system. So exactly what is it that he is trying to convey? That it is not thinking about itself alone, but thinking about the world and its public, showcasing its technology for the world to adopt and appreciate. These are all public diplomacy measures to communicate India as an international player. We saw similar efforts during the pandemic, which I had shown you a little earlier. Apart from communicating India's strength and potential, it has other plans as well. Being among the top 5 exporters of millets in the world, a part of its aim at the G20 is to improve awareness and consumption of Indian millets through such events and encourage the dignitaries of visiting nations to include millets in their diet while marketing and advertising them abroad, like you can see here in Barbados, and thereby boost South-South food cooperation. So then, this is a Facebook post of the MEA. This is yet another attempt, and we heard him in the video. This is something that, he was speaking about. This is yet another attempt to communicate India as a pioneer in using technology for better delivery of public services, which can be an example for G20 countries and others. After all, the G20 also offers the Indian leadership an occasion to project its innovation and best practices in using digital technology in areas such as education. Now, these kind of meetings are also being organized in cities like Bhubaneswar, Pune, Kashmir, and Amritsar, and many others, Kolkata. These efforts are not only to showcase the strength of its education sector, including infrastructure, innovation, and human resources, but to brand build Indian states as well for boosting investments while showcasing their local craftsmanship and natural beauty to attract tourists from abroad. So that is how we had begun the presentation. Why do countries brand build themselves? So basically to influence the global environment, information environment. It wants to attract investments, wants an increase in its exports, wants to attract tourists, So all this is why, countries, including India, brand builds themselves to get across to the public of the other countries, including, basically to influence their perceptions about India. There have been a number of outcomes. The more positive ones include more investments in India, which is happening. So you have Apple, there is Apple and Samsung and all the major well-known brands, companies coming to India, investing, rise in tourists, and also its recognition as a global player. And you can see the Pew Research poll indicates India's arrival on the world stage as a potential power. Then again in 2019, India is seen as a rising power in America, Europe, and Australia. So it's a global player. It's been recognized as a global player. India has also taken advantage of its position as the new president at the G20 to flex its muscles by inviting friendly countries like Bangladesh as a guest while snubbing Pakistan. So these are important diplomacy moves that India wants to demonstrate to the world as a country to reckon with. However, there are other sides of India as well, which several agencies and experts point towards. These are arguably India's weaknesses, which aggressive brand building has not been able to correct, and these might weaken the appeal of the India brand for several groups. This is the last slide. This is my forthcoming book, which covers India's public diplomacy and its brand building exercise. It's due next month. I just thought I'll share it with you because it could be a good, useful reference material for those who are interested to know more about India's new public diplomacy and brand building exercise. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Porama, for your brilliant and insightful lecture. It has been really very, very insightful. Thank you very much. I would request the participants, if you have any questions, you may please unmute and you can ask the question, or even you can type the question on the Q&A box.
So shall I just close the
yeah, you can take it down. Yeah.
Okay.
So in the meantime, when the participants are mulling over their thoughts on your lecture, one thing that really came out to me is when in the video was that when the Prime Minister said that we are ready to share our experience with the world, when he was talking about the UPI experience, it's somehow really showcases it showcases that that expertise with all sorts of humility, because we know we have started from the scratch right after independence, and from where we have built our development trajectory. It's not that if we compare it to the so-called quote-unquote white man's burden, that we are sharing our expertise with the world. He's mentioning that we are ready to share our experiences, which is a success story. And it is also being welcomed by several other countries of the world. So that is quite interesting in the choice of words that a Prime Minister has used. And also about when you talk about the Indian diaspora, even when the Australian Prime Minister visited India, and he was quite upfront in talking about the attacks on the Hindus and the Hindu temples, and in the joint statement he mentioned that we need to take steps. In fact, the Prime Minister needs to take the steps to avoid such incidences in future. And about my question is about since we have harnessed social media led public diplomacy, what could be done to further this kind of social media led public diplomacy to engender that global concern of climate change, because we have been talking very vocally about how it impacts the most vulnerable. And perhaps if you could just respond to those, and I mean, you can just think about it, but there are other participants who want to ask questions, if that is okay.
Yeah, We can go
Pratishtha.
ahead.
Pratishtha, if you could just identify yourself and then Srijay Lakshmi.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Simi. So, ma'am, Dr. Parma,
Yeah.
I have a question regarding that. Do you also include the domestic audiences based in India when we refer new public diplomacy definition? Because it's not just about what I have a feeling that when we talk about the diplomacy per se, it just doesn't affect the nation abroad, but it affects the public inside your own nation as well. So can you give the direction of my point of view if I'm in the right way or not? Like
No,
if
you're
it is
absolutely right.
Dr. Parama, sorry to interrupt. If you could just take the share screen down. It's on the screen yet.
So what do? I close it?
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Like I had, when I started my presentation, this is what I had mentioned. Public diplomacy, all public diplomacy, you just had the foreign public within its fold. It was all about engaging and, interacting with the foreign public. But now with social media, you have leaders and ministries and governments engaging the domestic people as well. The domestic audience is equally important in public diplomacy. Because, because of social media, what has happened is there is a blurring of borders. So, something which happens in India or something which happens in the US or anywhere, any part of the world, it's just a click of a mouse and it goes viral. It's all over this. It's all over the digital space. So what is really happening is even a small, a domestic incident can have international repercussions. And that is exactly what Simi was referring to. Hindu temples being attacked, or for that matter, any place of worship being attacked. So, the whole world, the leaders, the world leaders, the people, the countries are all concerned about this, about these developments that have been unfolding from time to time. So there is, with social media, there has been a lot of other things which have also happened. Something like George Floyd, when he was, being tackled by the white police in Minneapolis. So the kind of international ramifications it had for a country like the US, which we know is known for its soft power, it was taken so badly by countries like Iran and China. They got back at US saying that you are a hypocrite country. You talk about democracy and see what has happened. So, with social media, what has happened is domestic incidents become a world phenomenon. Like even, Ukraine and Russia. What is happening? Everybody knows. And the kind of, both Russia and Ukraine, both are trying to influence foreign perceptions. So they're trying to get perceptions in their favor, favorable perceptions. They want to shape how people are looking at the war. Like for Russia, they always keep saying that, it's not us who are at fault. It's the others who are at fault. So, that is how the blurring of borders has made, coming back to your point, blurring of borders, obsolete borders that has happened, that has brought what has been brought about by social media, is what has made the domestic audience equally important in public diplomacy.
Thank you, Dr. Parama. And I'll quickly take a couple of more questions because we have Professor Annapurna also waiting. Yeah, so quickly, if you could respond to these questions by Srijay Lakshmi Venkatesh. Can we say weekly or regular media briefings by various government ministries and departments also a part of digital public diplomacy? I think that's
yeah, I don't know whether it is digital. Yes, of course, if they're coming online, yes, but regular media briefing is definitely an important way of letting people know the government agendas or how a particular government is dealing with certain developments or incidents. Yes. So, of course, management of these are important, and you have these media briefings, and sometimes even tweets and posts are regularly posted by the ministries to let people know what the government is up to, because after all, the online digital public is aware and they want to know what's happening. So the world has actually changed. Everybody wants to be clued in, everybody wants to know what's happening. So yes.
That's right. So the next two questions, one is by Sneha. She would like to know India's take on conflict management regarding the ban on exports related to missiles and artillery for that matter. And the other one is by Harsh, which is very interesting. How can India's G20 presidency be useful for attracting more FDIs from G20 countries through public diplomacy? So
that's a very, I will give a miss to Sneha's question, because I am not too sure, but I will definitely answer Harsh's, and you're very right. And that is why I did touch upon this point when I said that, G20 has given an opportunity to India to showcase itself, to communicate how well its economy is, how vibrant and resilient its economy is, how innovative and technically advanced countries we are. It is, on the other hand, also brand building states, like I said, Bhubaneswar and Amritsar and all these other cities. From a branding perspective, they have been trying to brand these states as well. So when these G20 participants visit these towns and cities, and they participate in all these seminars and workshops, they are made familiar with what's happening, the strengths of India. And one of them is, of course, they tried, when Modi, when I showed, when you were shown that video where he said, how vibrant our economy is. So that is indirectly telling the participants and the countries that you can come and invest in our country. So, these are various ways. Even like the Kashmir, they are having a session workshop in Kashmir as well. I think it's the Kashmir University. And again, there, what is the idea of getting the participants there? To familiarize them with the local craftsmanship, the natural beauty. So you have more tourists getting into those states. So these are all ways and measures to brand build not only India, but the Indian states as well, so that you get more investments, whether it is foreign direct investments or you have these big companies coming to invest in your country or attracting tourists. So yes, these are all public diplomacy steps to get more investments, to attract tourists into the country. And G20 just gives India that kind of opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Poruma, for your wonderful session. And we really are grateful to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simi, and thank you, IMPRI, for this opportunity. And thank you, participants.
Thank you. We have with us our next expert, Professor Annapurna Nautiyal. And I would request Ashwas to please introduce ma'am.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'd like to invite our second expert, Professor Annapurna Nautiyal, who will be speaking on contours of India's foreign policy in the current era. Professor Annapurna Nautiyal is the Vice Chancellor of the Himwati Nandan Bahugana Garhwal University, Srinagar, Uttarakhand. A very warm welcome to you, Professor. We look forward to hearing from you. Over to you, ma'am.
Over to you, ma'am. Good evening.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. And at the outset, I would like to thank Simi Mehta for inviting me, and also to Dr. Arjun Kumar, who have been sending their mails in plenty to remind me that I have to speak in this forum. And good evening to all the participants. So I was listening to the earlier speaker also, and that was quite interesting. And I think it's a very opportune moment to speak on India's G20 presidency and the contours of India's foreign policy. So I will not repeat the things which the earlier speaker has already said, but I would like to just touch the core of G20 presidency, which has been defined by Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And this is not a new phenomena. If we go back to our history, our Vedic literature, we always believe that this earth is our family. So that's what India has given the logo Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And the aim is that we belong to one earth, we have one family, and we have one future. And the duty is to heal this earth, create harmony among the family, and create hope for the future. And this was replicated by the 100 monuments which were lit when the G presidency came on India. And also, there would be 200 meetings in different locations, as the earlier speaker was talking about that. And this is to showcase India's cultural diversity, because India has always been known as a melting pot of religions, cultures, and languages. Sanskrit has always been a dominant language in India, but all other religions like Hinduism, like Buddhism, and the Sikhism, their origination is also from India. And this is the concept of Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya. It is enshrined in India's culture, India's civilization, and we are a pluralistic country. And we have a very tolerant kind of nature, and this has been exemplified by the G20 logo also. That's why it says that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We have faith, and we feel that our spirituality, like I come from Garhwal. This is a university. This is located in the Uttarakhand Himalayas, and Uttarakhand Himalayas are famous, or they are known as Devbhumi, abode of God. And we belong to this place, and this place is known as spiritual place. People come here for their spiritual quest, and sometimes they get it, and sometimes they do not get it. But most of the people, they come here in search of spirituality. Then we have different kind of good practices like yoga, and this is also a brand which India is promoting in the world. And that's how 21st June is celebrated as International Yoga Day, not only in India, but worldwide. And also, we also inform the world about Ayurveda and its practices, and they are becoming very, very popular. And in the Himalayan areas, you will find all these Ayurvedic centers where they provide different kind of panch karmas and other methodologies which are very important in Ayurveda. Then we have the biggest USP, Bollywood. Like yesterday only, we were all over, from Natu to the murmurs of elephant. So we are all over. Our food is known worldwide, and people are crazy about Indian food. And India, that's why we feel that India can be a bridge to this volatile world, and also to bring some kind of peace, because the world has not changed at all. The world is still the same, because we are still in the era when we can say that the nature of security has remained same, but with some changes, because still we talk about national security, and that national security is defined by superiority in the area of military, economic, geopolitical, or size, etc. And we still care about our national security. That is our primary national interest also. We also talk about economic security, because that also comes within the bracket of national security. And geopolitics is not new. But now there are some more areas which has been added into this concept of national security, like health security, which was not that urgent before the COVID-19. So now it has become a kind of security which has made our globe presently from a Google village to a global village to a Google village, where everyone is connected, and this connection is also bringing happiness, but at the same time, this connectivity and ease of doing things is also bringing misery. but it is also indicating towards the strengths which India is also developing slowly and slowly, which we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic, when the vaccination was provided to each and every person of the country to safeguard his or her life. And that's how we can proudly say that we are a safe country now. But there are some other things also which need our consideration and about which the earlier speaker also spoke. And it is that power is still very much there. We cannot put aside power when we talk about international politics or national interest or anything like that. But now power is related to digital technology. Now we are talking about AI. There were instances of the Chinese balloons which were seen in different parts of the world. And they were related to the artificial intelligence which they were gathering. So the power of technology is being known worldwide. And also the power of information in social media. Social media is a tool where you can also express your ideas, but you can also express your culture, your civilization, and also the plus points of your country. And here, the important thing is, there is an article by Deng Wong, and that is that China's hidden tech revolution. And that it is published recently in the Foreign Affairs. And it clearly says that US was the scientific giant, it is being used for the US because the design, research, and development were with the US. But in 2022, US import of solar technology reached $8 million, and much of it came from China. So now China is into this kind of developmental phase where technology is very important for China. And China has overtaken the US slowly and slowly. Earlier, we used to know China as a country who was only manufacturing the parts and different kind of things for other countries. But now China is also investing a lot into the technology, and also China is coming up very fast. And China is also now the largest exporter of batteries which are used in electrical vehicles. So for this green technology also, the dependence on China is increasing. So now the geopolitics is now revolving around a struggle between democracy and autocracy, because we take great pride, like in the G20 presidency also, we are very proud that we are a democratic country. And we try to work in a way that is called consensus. We try to build up consensus and we do it. And our Prime Minister wants to do it internationally also, that he wants to develop global consensus through this G20 presidency for creating some kind of common document for our future, for our earth, for our family. So this is also important. But the conflict between democracy and autocracy is also there. And this is a kind of thing which obviously provides a kind of advantage to the countries who are in the side of democracy. And the autocracies are being ridiculed. But this new world order, when we can talk about that, the integration of economics and geopolitics between China and US is missing. And if this is missing, then there are two more points are coming up. And these points are competition, competition and cooperation. Competition and cooperation, and finding superiority in technology. And China has skilled workforce. And this is also like we can talk about the iPhones. China is the biggest manufacturer of iPhone, Apple. And China and US are meeting. But despite their meetings, there is no hope that their tensions will be will be reduced, or there would be no tension among them. And China is being seen as a power that has a capability to reshape the international order with its economic, diplomatic, military, and technological power. And it is attempting to change the global world order through that AI, solar power, and all other things which are very important for it. And the most important part of is that India is also trying hard to come in between US and China and try to become a bridge to bring that kind of harmony, that kind of peace. But that is also difficult for India, because still we are talking about digital revolution in India, and it has made the human life very easy. Now we are in every area we are using digital technology, and which has made the human life very easy. For a common person, it's very easy now. But the digital revolution, or the connect which our Prime Minister has developed with the countries of globe, or with the big leaders, because the G20, the final meeting will be in September 24, and that would be attended by all the head of the states, and still all the foreign ministers and finance ministers and all the persons are coming who are related to G20 to India but still we are unable to get a document which is based on the general consensus. So general consensus is missing, which means there is a lack of trust between the states. And this lack of trust also indicates towards the contours of the foreign policy of India as well as the world as such. Now we are also talking about again that the bipolarity is coming. It is returning back. Why? Because there is an interaction, conflict, and cooperation between China and the US. And there is a talk about multipolarity also. And this is about all the countries who are trying hard to be in the main global arena. Like US is there, China is there, Russia is there, even India is there, and Japan could also be there in future. So there is a kind of confusion in the world that in which way we are going and where India should go, and what should be the role of India in this kind of world order. Now, for example, if we take the example of Ukraine war is an example that the nature of world politics has not changed. Still, we are in the same line that the mightiest will rule the world, as it was during the time of Cortel, that the power is advocated by the king and its power. So this is still the phenomena. Although the Ukraine war is not going to end soon, or it will be in the favor of Russia, there is doubts, because the technology has also helped Ukraine, and this technology has helped Ukraine in the armed conflict also, because this was due to the power of innovation and invention. That is the power which is going to define the era of conflict in a different way. And this power, that why the technologies will define the future of geopolitics. So this Ukraine President Zelensky, he established 2 years before the war one kind of digital information system, and all their military data and all data about the buildings, etc., was stored in iCloud. So the missiles kept on attacking the Ukraine, but their data is still safe. The data is not being destroyed. And they had developed a mobile app that was known as Dia. And they had also developed a Starlink to upload all the photographs, all the videos about the incoming missile attacks, so that the army could be ready to face that kind of attack. And even they had developed some kind of technology or some kind of platform that was SpaceX to be connected with one another. And that was for people to people connection. So this was the initiative which was taken by Ukraine 2 years before the war. They did not know that the Russians are coming after them. So this is the power of digital technology, and in the era of information technology, this has become very, very important. And so that's why I said that now, besides military power, economic power, cultural power, which we are displaying too much and through various means, the power will also rest on the ability of innovation, faster and better, and also it will also define the character of the great power competition. So this is one of the important points, I think, which we should take care of, because we are also talking about the digital revolution in India. But I am still, all of us know that India has to work more on this digital revolution, or to provide this connectivity to each and every person in India. So still much work has to be done. But on the other hand, if we talk about again about China, and we again see that this global order is helping China very much. Like Russia is not in that position of calling the shots. It is weakened. And Europe has its own problems. So Europe is in the side of decline. And if we talk about the return of bipolarity, the US is engaged with China. That's very true. And both things are going on simultaneously, that is competition and cooperation. And that too with the rising China, because China is rising daily, and every day there are so many things which are going on. And even in India's border, nothing is very good, or we can say that we are safe. So, but people are talking about that now is the time for India to fill up this kind of gap, which we can see in the interactions or in the mechanism of the world politics. So there are various things which India can do. Now China is I think kind of encircling India through its BRI. So, and India's neighbors, because India under Prime Minister Modi started the policy of neighborhood first, and that was the great policy. And even from look east to India shifted to act east, and I think that was also a great policy, because India wanted to unite the states which are important for India's protection. India's protection, because if we again take the example of Kautilya said that any ruler has to identify the enemies first. And he was very, very, very forthright that your neighbors could be your enemy. And some of the neighbors could be your friend, but all of the neighbors cannot be your friend. So you have to identify enemies. And we have two good neighbors like Pakistan and China, with whom our relationship is not that good. Although with China, we are in talking terms, but the competition and cooperation is going hand to hand. On the one side, we are fighting on the borders to safeguard our borders. And on the other hand, the dialogue is also going on, because India has already said or already declared or already given this message as a G20 president to Russia also, by not taking any side, that war is no solution for any problem, but dialogue can solve the problem. So India has also to follow what India preaches. We have to be in dialogue with Pakistan, and we have to be in dialogue with China. So that is for sure. And that's how the BRI is also a kind of trap. And as we are seeing that our neighbors are somewhat perturbed by it, because it is a kind of debt which they are not able to pay back. So every country loves the money which is coming through, or the infrastructure which is coming through it, but no country loves the country like China. Because if you do an opinion poll, I do not think many people will say that we love China. Many neighbors will say that they love China, but it is their compulsion. It is their helplessness that they have to go to China, because India is not able to provide them that kind of facilities which China is providing. So this aid diplomacy will not make friends for India, but it is also important for India to safeguard its neighborhood and also to work towards cooperation and also assurance and reassurance to the neighbors that India is for them. So this is also important for India to know. So this time is very, very important, because we are, as I said, that the situation is both-sided. It's good and bad also. Good that we have got the G20 presidency, and now is the time that we can convey so many messages to the world about peace, harmony, prosperity, and that prosperity should be joined. Now we are into the climate. We are into the different kind of difficult kind of environmental crisis that is climate change. And I can tell you from my experience that we are living in an area which is very fragile from the point of view of climate. And we have seen that tragedy of Joshimath, and still we are, it is not out of danger. It is there. So there are so many things which are happening. We are talking about greenhouse gases. We are talking about soil erosions. We are talking about floods. We are talking about unpredictability of weather. We are talking all about these things, but we have to devise some means to curtail it. And India, I think India has also, when India advocates that we have to work for one earth, so India also tries to convey that this can be brought through democracy, dialogue, and diplomacy. These are the measures where you don't have to use your force. And you can always work for sustainable economic growth, because we have to think about the humans first, because we are a family. So the growth should be sustainable, and we have to live in harmony with nature. That is the lifestyle changes about which India is talking. India is talking and also conveying its message to the world that we have to make the lifestyle changes, and we have to have the diplomatic activities for maintaining global supply chain for food, because food is very important for every person. And in India also, we see that all the population is not equal. We are still not an inclusive society. We have different layers within the society. And some of the people, they don't have enough food to satisfy their hunger. So every person should be free of hunger. Every person should have shelter. So these things are common throughout the world. So we have to also work about food, fertilizer, medical products, because COVID-19 taught us many things. Even to the US also, the COVID-19 taught many things. Because the biggest power of our century behave just like a person, like a country that did not have any kind of equipments to deal with COVID-19. And the casualties were also of very high number. But China was ready to supply all the items of COVID-19. So China was a manufacturing hub. But India was also not behind, and India also did very well. Even we also invented our own drug, our own vaccination, and this was India's kind of message to the world. Yes, we have also arrived, and this kind of message will should also come, so that the message goes to the world and to the global public that India is not a country who only talks, but also delivers. So we have to be delivering things, and we have to have a transition from rule taker to rule maker also. And this transition should be smooth. That's why we can do everything sustainability on the basis of sustainability. And this sustainability is also that we have to mitigate the risk. So we have to have a consensus. We have to have a common voice when we talk about these things. We should take it in our stride that we have to have the common opinion of the global public, that we have to mitigate the risk arising from climate or from weapons of mass destruction, or we have to enhance the global security in all levels. So India can do many things through its G20 presidency. Like we can work on disaster risk reduction, we can work on capacity building, we can work on restructuring the social structure, and we can also work on global warming. But I think it will not it's not very easy, because we have to have multilateral cooperation for managing these things which we want to do. And we have to have inclusive approach, but every country will fall into line will be a dream. There would be difference of opinion, and that's why I said that the consensus is not coming. And we have to have a very focused view on which we want to deliver something. And we have to strengthen our own system, because our systems are also porous. And so we have to think about it. And also we have to have that kind of vision that without peace, harmony, and security, our future generations will not be able to benefit from any kind of economic growth or any kind of development, technological innovation. So through G20 presidency, we can always give this message of peace and harmony, because India has always been working, or the aim of our country is always satya and ahimsa, non-violence. So through this, we can send a message of peace to the world, and we have to first practice it, and then we have also the ethos which were like yatharthvad. We always believe in realism. Realism is also very important for India and for the globe, for that matter, because we cannot dwell in the imaginary world. We have to see the reality face to face, and we have to have cooperation from all the people if we have to have consensus. Otherwise, this will not work. We have to develop partnerships. For that, we will have to extend our hand. We have to handhold, or we have to do various things for this kind of partnership. Then we can always look back and go back to our religious diplomacy, which was earlier done through Buddhism diplomacy. Like Dalai Lama is one of the epitome of that kind of diplomacy. We can, like we developed the Kartarpur corridor, we have to have that kind of corridors in various other places also for spreading the message of harmony in the world. And like if we have to check the Chinese influence, India has also devised the strategies to confront the BRI and maritime Silk Route, etc., like the Spice Route, Sagarmala. There are so many projects there. So we can do it. And India's focus should be, a long time focus should be on economic growth. Simi, please tell me if I have stressed my time, or my time is over.
No, ma'am.
You gave me, no. So how much time I can continue?
Another 5 minutes, ma'am.
Another 5 minutes, okay, that's fine, because you can always remind me that I have jumped the time. So as I talked about that, India also believes in civilizational diplomacy, and I shared 2 readings also, which talk about the Panchamrit. One Panchamrit is about that sustainable development, which we talked about in the COP26 summit in Glasgow, 1st November 2021. And that was that India wanted to achieve big climate goals, like one was that non-fossil fuel energy capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030. And the another was India will meet 50% of requirement by renewable energy by 2030. But here I have to say that China is coming up like anything in the field of this renewable energy and the green technologies. Third was reduce total projected carbon emission by 1 billion tons. Fourth was reduce carbon intensity by 45% by 2030. And by 2070, net zero should be the aim. The greenhouse gases should be reduced, and then LIFE, lifestyle for environment, that I have already explained. So, but when we talk about the civilizational diplomacy, there is also Panchamrit, which Prime Minister Modi spoke about in 2015. So that was that we strive for Samman. Samman means dignity of honor. We are interested in Samvad. Samvad means engagement and dialogue, which is the present day demand also, that you, in a world of competition and cooperation, you have to have dialogue to resolve the unpleasant situation. And then Samriddhi, prosperity, because we are talking about one common future or one earth. So we have to have that Samriddhi, prosperity for everyone. And then Suraksha means security, that regional or global security is must, because unless we are secured, we cannot do innovations, we cannot do anything better except investing into the military gadgets. So which will deprive the population from other kind of securities. And Sanskriti and Sabhyata, that is cultural and civilizational links. So India believes that we don't have to fight the battle of civilizations. Like Huntington wrote about clash of civilization, but India thinks that through civilizations, we can send the message of peace. And this peace and harmony will take the world forward. And in 1955 also, India was into Panchsheel, and everybody knows about Panchsheel. So I need not to talk about it. But yes, India has taken various initiatives to safeguard itself and also to give a message that we are also in, we are also not out. And we need that kind of consideration in international politics. Like we are a top contender for the inclusion of India in the group of nuclear countries. We are also into it. And we also want to be included in the nuclear suppliers group. But the interaction and the equations are different. That's why India is not able to take its proper place in that. But I think with the G20 presidency, there would be many things which will happen, and that will take India into that direction. But for that, we have to be focused. We have to identify our goals, that what we are going to achieve through G20 presidency. It's a big honor. It's a big gift. And we have given so many things and so many things to the delegates who are visiting India. We are providing them destinations, various destinations. We are trying to acquaint them through the various cultures, because India is famous for its diversity. No other country is like India to match its diversity of language, religion, culture, and everything. Food. What you talk about diversity, it's very vibrant. So India has to be very focused and give a very clear message to the world that we would like to do this in this way. So this has to come out with this churning, which is going on, and the 200 meetings will definitely bring out something which will be important for us and for the globe, for the betterment of the globe. So with this, I think, Simi, I'll stop. And then as per your mandate, I can have some questions if there are any questions. And I again extend my warm wishes to you and to your team. And thanks a lot for inviting me again. That I'll say again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. It has been really very wonderful listening to you, as always. Thank you so much for your lecture. There are a few questions that have been raised. I would just want to raise them to you, and you can take them as per your choice.
Okay.
This is a question by Madam Josephine, and she really commends this course, and as it helps to understand the Indian spirit better. But she also asks whether India can accept other southern countries' brands like itself, because we live in an interconnected world. And there is a question by an anonymous attendee, although we do not really would want, if it is possible, you could identify yourself, it would be great. To give a message of peace globally, how to end internal non-violent acts, especially amid internal religious and communal discords that is happening in the country. So ma'am, if you could take these, and then perhaps we could go on to the next set.
You can also ask participants to ask questions.
Okay, let me just take this one first, because I remember it. The question about that we are going to give the message of peace when there is not too much harmony inside the country. As I said, that India is a diverse country and India is a democracy. Actually, we must appreciate this fact that every religion, every language, and every culture has got that kind of opportunity to express itself. Our judiciary is independent, and mostly the institutions, they work independently. So the message of peace which India would like to give, it will not be a hidden message, because we are not in the favor of giving some kind of problem to the other communities and then come back with the message of peace. Because as I said in the beginning also, we should not do things which we cannot do ourselves. First, we have to restore our house. We have to also solve our problems. That's why I said that it will be difficult, because we are also witnessing various kind of activities which are going on in India. And but there is no stopping. There are protests going on. There is no stopping to them. They are doing it. So there would be harmony, or no harmony, but every person is free to, there is a right to free speech. So I think this will, maybe it will not give that kind of message, because sometimes the dispute which arose after the BBC documentary, that it was banned. So I think this can happen only in India, that we are discussing a thing which is not of very importance, which is not very important, that we are discussing all these things which does not affect our work culture. We need not to waste our time in these things. That's why I said that India has to be very focused as how to choose things which will sustain its message. If our messaging is wrong, we are not focused, we will not be able to give correct message to the global, to the people globally. I hope I made some sense.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you. Madam Josephine, if you could just unmute and ask the question for yourself, and also Karishma Talreja. Yes. Please ask the question. Karishma, in the meantime, I think.
Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for your session. Actually, it was quite interesting. My question is that looking at India's G20 presidency, and we've taken up Vasudeva Kutumbakam, and you also mentioned the importance of Samvad, dialogue. We have the neighborhood first policy also. What is your view of the potential of South Asia as a region coming together to work on climate change collectively, considering especially India and Pakistan's bilateral issues?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, because somehow we have to also talk about the Asian way. we have to talk about this Asian way also. And as you yourself have pointed out, that in view of India-Pakistan relations. So as I said, that even if we have strained relations with Pakistan, but India has never stopped dialogue. Although it is also said that unless the the borders are calm, we cannot have dialogue. But India has not stopped the mode of dialogue. And under G20 presidency, it is, I think, India would be as a president, India would reach to Pakistan also to bring that kind of order, and also take all the neighbors together, because first we have to sustain ourselves. We have to sustain ourselves. We have to see, because the climate change will affect the South Asian countries in a very difficult and different way. And some of the island countries will merge. They will be submerged due to the global warming. So we have to first think about them and try to convince them that their safety lies in the green economy, not in the economy in which we are participating now. So this is also very important, that we have to generate that trust. Trust is there. I'm not saying that the trust is not there, but as I said, that the quarterly says that your enemies can be your neighbors. So you have to try to build up that trust, and India has that policy of neighborhood first. In COVID-19 also, India provided vaccine and all other support material to the neighboring countries. And India has also launched a Mausam app to alert the island countries about any kind of tsunami or any kind of environmental problem. So the trust building exercise is going on, and India is not lagging behind in this. Now it depends on the neighboring countries also, that they want to treat India as a friend or as a boss. If they would like to treat India as a boss, I think the relationship is not going to improve. They should have trust, and because this concept of the big brother approach has to change somehow. So then only the trust can be developed, and we can also solve this environmental problem, because this is a very great problem, and it is going to hit the Asian countries more than the other countries.
Thank you, ma'am. One last question by Amrita. Amrita, would you like to ask the question? Okay, I'll read out the question, ma'am, for you. What should India do more in the context of spreading Buddhism and cultivating the Buddhist circuit, considering China's growing sphere of influence, even in this domain, and its attempts to politicize it?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Actually, that's why China is not accepting the Dalai Lama, which has been nominated by Dalai Lama itself, because they don't want India to be the center of Buddhism. They want to divide it also. So they are into religious diplomacy, or kind of damaging this area also. And that's how they claim the Northeast, particularly Arunachal Pradesh, Tawang. They claim that it belongs to them, because it is the birthplace of Dalai Lama, and they take offense of it. So I think this is again the time of competition and cooperation. There is a competition going on between India and China about who is the originator of Buddhism. But as I said, that if you read any script, anything, you'll find that India is the origin of Buddhism. And if India is the origin of Buddhism, then I think this concept of imposing ideas on the world that no, it is China, I think it's strong. So India will have to have some kind of dialogue with China also. And as I said, that China and India are in a very difficult and different position. On the one hand, they are also competing for power, more power. China is already powerful, but India is also saying that yes, we have also arrived and recognized us. Why are you not recognizing us? What is the problem with you that you don't allow us to be in an NSG, or you don't want us to be in the group of 5 nuclear countries? So I think this will also be a area of concern, but I'm very sure that India, with its diplomatic acumen, like I also gave the example of the India way of Shashank, our foreign minister, and one has to read that book to understand the ethos of India's diplomacy. And he talks about Krishna also, that he says that Krishna was the biggest diplomat of his era. And he has written so emphatically about how the diplomacy worked at that time. So that kind of diplomacy has to be there to impress, because Krishna was alone, and Duryodhan was with the Chaurangi Sena of Krishna. But alone, the lone Krishna guided the whole war of Mahabharata. So we have to have that kind of diplomatic acumen. We have to have that kind of intelligence, and we have to have that kind of focus, so that we can also encash our Buddhism. And we can also tell the world, look, this is the Buddhist sides, and this is the Buddhism which we preach. And this is for harmony and peace, not for any kind of competition or conflict.
Excellent. Thank you so much, ma'am. It has been really wonderful listening to you, and especially when you are focusing on a topic which is really diverse, and especially in this volatile world, India's foreign policy also becomes very complex. So thank you so much for detailing it out for all of us very, very poignantly. Thank you very much.
And I'm really thankful to you for providing me this opportunity, and especially to Simi and to the whole IMPRI team. My congratulations to all of you, and best wishes to everyone and all the participants, because without participants, there cannot be any
right? We hope to keep learning from you, ma'am. We hope to have you.
Sure. Thank you so much. So with your permission, I leave.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. And if we have questions, we will direct them to
you.
Sure.
You have my email, and you can approach me anytime.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ashwash, we have our now we have our next speaker, Mr. Don McLean Gill. He is joining us from the Philippines, from Manila. Welcome, Don, and I would request Ashwash to just briefly introduce him, and yes, we can have this lecture.
Right. I would like to invite our third and the final expert for today's session, Mr. Don McLean Gill, who is a geopolitical analyst and author, the Philippines, who will be speaking on India's rise and the future, Southeast Asian strategic relations. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. The floor is all yours.
Well, thank you so much for that. And, I wish to thank the Impact and Policy Research Institute, of course, Dr. Sibby, Dr. Arjun, for, paving the way, of course, for providing, not only scholars and students, but the rest of the populace with the opportunity to learn, particularly in line with foreign policy and development. And of course, I wish to greet my distinguished co-panelists as well, who have also contributed significantly to this program. Now, well, thank you for that introduction. Well, today my discussion would actually be revolving around the area which I significantly would like to focus on, and that is India's evolving strategic partnership with Southeast Asia. Now, understanding, of course, the rise of India, we have to understand that India's perception towards the international system creates a significant contribution towards, of course, the emerging multipolar transitioning field that we are now facing. Now, for us to understand, of course, India's foreign policy, particularly as it heads the G20 now, we have to understand its relations with critical regions, particularly in the Eastern Hemisphere. And that is where Southeast Asia comes in. Since the beginning of independence, Southeast Asia has figured prominently in Indian discourse. However, the degree of its prominence in Indian strategic calculations has only increased. And this is a very good sign. And in fact, I could definitely say that as India continues to rise, its accommodation from Southeast Asian countries will inevitably grow more. So this particular topic would be the focal point of my discussion. I would briefly share a little presentation that I have prepared for this evening. And just kindly give me a quick second. This is usually the awkward part, so I apologize in advance.
It's okay, Don.
All right.
Do you need any help?
No, I think I got it. I think I'll just share it right now. Share screen. Okay, here it is. Okay. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, let me just put it on slideshow mode. All right, so I'll get started now. So thank you again. So this particular discussion would really revolve around understanding the evolution of India's foreign policy towards Southeast Asia. As I've mentioned, as India continues to gain prominence, particularly because of its accumulation of material power, the projection of normative capabilities as well has figured significantly in the strategic calculations of Southeast Asian states. Particularly where I'm based, the Philippines. In fact, the role of India and harnessing the role of India as a vital partner has in fact increased beginning arguably 2016 under the presidency of President Duterte and continues to gain momentum now. And this is something that we have to look into, the general patterns, of course, of India's approach towards Southeast Asia and how this reflects a rising India and what to expect as India continues to rise. Now, when we talk about India-Southeast Asia relations, it's often viewed through the prism, of course, of culture, shared culture, and history. However, looking into the factors that encompass politics, defense, economics, one can definitely say that India-Southeast Asian ties have faced a challenging path, a challenging road to get where it has gotten today. Now, India's strategic relations with Southeast Asian states are significant, and they continuously deepen, they continuously expand, and this reflects, of course, the consistent expansion of mutual interests and goals between and among India and its Southeast Asian neighbors. Now, Southeast Asia also continues to cement its importance in India's evolving foreign policy. Now, if we look into two cornerstones of India's Southeast Asian policy, we could start from the Look East policy and the Act East policy, where ASEAN centrality maintains pivotal in these particular frameworks. And in fact, India's Indo-Pacific framework also centers on the role of ASEAN, Southeast Asia, particularly as the crux of its engagements throughout the Indo-Pacific. And this tells us a lot, of course, about the role of India in Southeast Asia, and of course, the significance of Southeast Asia, particularly for diplomatic connectivity, for power projection, economic growth. And in fact, economic growth has been predominantly one of the initial catalysts for India to really engage with the region in the 1990s. So, we have to understand that today, Southeast Asia is positioned, of course, at the strategic overlap between the traditional sphere of US influence and, of course, the locus of China's growing power. So, the region is definitely in for a treat, particularly in terms of understanding the fluctuations, not only in the geopolitical landscape of the region, but of course, the fluctuations in the international distribution of power. So, amid these ongoing structural shifts in the distribution of material power, the fluctuations, of course, in the projection of norms, the rise of India as an emerging great power, as I would definitely like to argue, in a transitioning multipolar era, as we are still transitioning towards that, is seen as another significant element, of course, beyond the binary US-China prism. So, as India continues to pave the path, towards economic and military growth, it congruently offers states in the international system a potential alternative. Now, we have to understand, of course, not to over-exaggerate, of course, the general trends that are affecting the world today. However, if we look into the situation, India's rise, despite being dwarfed still by the economic capacity and material capabilities of the United States and China, still offers a significant contribution, of course, to stability and peace in the world. And of course, its diplomatic heft, its diplomatic connectivity, its normative heft as the world's largest democracy also figures in and complements its continuous rise in material power. So, understanding these power transitions, and of course, looking into how India's rise differs from the rest, can be seen through its engagements with particular sub-regions of the Indo-Pacific. And this in itself, of course, is something that we would like to look into for this particular presentation. Now, India's evolving relations with Southeast Asia, I personally categorize it into 5 stages. These are not exclusive, definitely, but they provide us with a general understanding of the shifts that have taken place, or the evolutionary phases that have taken place throughout the pivotal partnership between both sides. And I believe that these 5 points are significantly important for us to be able to understand how India's policy changed, how Southeast Asia's perception towards India changed, and how these changes relatively reflect the contemporary period of international geopolitics. And we will start with the Cold War era. It's important to put it into context. I'm sure a lot of you are aware, of course, of the complexities involved in the past, but without understanding the past, we would not be able to put the present into context. So this is why it's important, of course, to underscore these particular stages to understand how we got here today. So we start with the Cold War era, the dawn of the Look East policy, the post 9/11 era. This is significant. The establishment of the Act East policy, and the rise of the Indo-Pacific construct. So these are the 5 points that would also be the outline to my presentation. Let's talk about the Cold War era. Many of you are aware, of course, that the structural dynamics of the Cold War really centered on the power competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. While there were no direct negative engagements or altercations or any provocations for a shooting conflict between India and Southeast Asia for this particular period, we could definitely understand that structural dynamics play a significant role in altering the foreign policy calculations of particular states. And in this context, understanding the structural dimensions of the Cold War would help us understand the starting point of India's arduous relationship with Southeast Asia for this particular period. Now, going back to structure, the US and India perceived to be in the opposite fences, on the opposite side of the strategic fence. While Washington's overt support for Pakistan and its improvement of relations with China in the 1970s, especially with the visit of Henry Kissinger, really set the tone, a negative tone, of course, for foreign policy decision-making in New Delhi. Now, India's policy of non-alignment, its amiable relations with the Soviet Union, were equally interpreted as anti-US and anti-West and pro-communist by the United States. Now, the purpose of non-alignment is not to choose any side, but, understanding power competitions and the binary lens that great powers see through, not being with a particular side is being against that particular side. And this has catalyzed into a negative connotation between the United States and India. And in fact, the birth of ASEAN in 1967 was received in a rather lukewarm manner by New Delhi. And because it is understandable, the Seattle Treaty of Southeast Asia that is US-led involves Pakistan, despite not being a Southeast Asian state. In fact, Pakistan has utilized SEATO, for example, to harness and leverage its material capabilities to really try to balance against India and South Asia. And of course, in Hanoi's invasion of Cambodia, the overt or invert role of the Soviet Union has also been linked, to a negative connotation towards India because of the proximity of India and the Soviet Union. So really the problem with India-Southeast Asian relations then was not because there were direct altercations, but because the lack of awareness between both sides brought by the structural configurations of the international system really played a big role in actually hindering the availability of opportunities from both sides to really harness that particular potential. So this was the Cold War in a nutshell. Now, looking into the Look East policy under Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, India began to embrace economic liberalization, privatization, the dissolution of the Soviet Union, which was the significant structural thorn during the Cold War period between the United States and India. It was dissolved. And with this alleviation, more positive opportunities came about in forging more proactive and practical relations between India and the United States. And this particular positivity that occurred between India and the United States also translated in a somewhat positive connotation from Southeast Asia towards India. We have to remember that the United States plays a pivotal role in the decision-making of key Southeast Asian states, particularly the Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, and in fact, as Indonesia was embracing an anti-communist position at that time, in fact, even it was supposed to be towards non-alignment. It was also wary of extra-regional forces in Southeast Asia. It was much more convenient, to be more amiable with a particular power that is against communism. So this particular factors really relatively played through in terms of Southeast Asian decision-making towards India. Now, the 1990s saw, as I mentioned, a steady growth in multi-dimensional partnerships between India and Southeast Asian states. So, Singapore played a pivotal role, of course, in bringing India about for, the ARF in 1994. It also played a key role in having India in as ASEAN's dialogue partner the year after. Southeast Asian states began to look proactively and positively towards the Look East policy. In fact, with all the hype coming in from the Look East policy, Southeast Asian states such as Malaysia, Vietnam, Singapore were really looking into incorporating India as a potential strategic counterweight to a rising China. However, of course, but before that, if we look into the expansion of ASEAN from 1995 to 1999, encompassing Indochina, this was also a relatively positive trajectory for India as well, considering its proximity to Vietnam and of course the region as well. So these were very good signs. And of course, India began incorporating ASEAN members individually and collectively in sub-regional organizations. So BIMSTEC, IORA, and the MGC. So we could definitely say that India was also trying to harness its newfound and reinvigorated partnership with Southeast Asian states. So, however, we have to understand that because India's material capabilities were still rather constrained during the 1990s, particularly because of its just recent attempt for trade liberalization, economic liberalization, and of course the economic and energy security issues that have come before that, we could definitely say that its ability to really push through with particular incentives and initiatives with Southeast Asian states were quite limited. So hence, if we look into the data, India's contributions economically, which was supposed to be the pivotal factor of the Look East policy, reflecting India's intent to really engage proactively with Southeast Asian states, was quite limited. And this resulted in a cool down, particularly of India's engagements with Southeast Asia towards the end of the 1990s. So while the Look East policy played a significant role in opening up opportunities between India and Southeast Asian states, the lack of material capabilities, the limited diplomatic connectivities at that time, infrastructure deficits, really played a part in really constraining India's ability to maximize its ties with Southeast Asian states. Now, we look into the third phase, which is the post 9/11 era. Now, unfortunately, not a lot of people tend to look into this period as a significant component in India's Southeast Asian relations, but I have endeavored, of course, along with other authors, to really look into the significance of such a phase and how this has positively impacted India's policy towards Southeast Asia. Now, the devastating terrorist attacks in 2001, illustrated that not even the most dominant state in the world is, immortal enough or untouchable enough not to be scathed by the rise of transnational terrorism. And along with this particular period, we could definitely see the burgeoning US-China power competition, particularly post-2008. During the financial crisis, China saw this as an opportunity to embrace what it believes to be its vision, its calling, to lead Asia and to serve as the alternative engine for growth in Southeast Asia and East Asia and the rest of the continent. So this also led to more assertive policies from China as it continued to grow, as it continued to, harness its material capabilities to translate it into, of course, power projection and capabilities as it continues to grow up to this particular point. Now, these two challenges really served as an opportunity for India to harness its engagements with Southeast Asian states, and again to harness its ability to forge more proactive and positive relations with the United States. So, the post 9/11 period presented an opportunity for India's recognition and importance with, a major power with one of the richest experiences in counterinsurgency, de-radicalization, and counterterrorism. An important development in the post 9/11 era centered on the US affirmation towards India as a trusted strategic partner and, of course, a significant security provider, not only for the Indian Ocean, but also towards the Western Pacific. And in fact, it was during this particular period when the Indian Navy escorted US ships across the Strait of Malacca. And this is something, to the surprise of many Southeast Asian states, that they saw this as a recalibrated policy from the United States to India. And this began to really recalibrate their own individual perceptions towards India more positively on that note. And in fact, when former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton came to India, she in fact introduced the idea that India should not only look east but also act east. And this was a foreshadowing, of course, of something that was bound to happen years after, where India would play a pivotal role under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi to really play a more proactive engagement with Southeast Asian states. So we look into the post 9/11 era, some of which I've already mentioned. The post 2008 level of Chinese assertion, we could see that its defense budget grew in double digits. Its procurement, its engagements throughout the region, its militarization of the South China Sea, and of course, its maneuvers along the line of actual control with India, and of course, into the Indian Ocean as well, which started off as a benign anti-piracy mission in 2008. But today we can say that it is definitely another story. And in fact, China is continuously using what I'd like to call geopositional balancing in the Indian Ocean. We could talk about that later, perhaps in the question and answer. But yeah, the post 9/11 era, it was marred with a series of problems, particularly in terms of interstate relations, dealing with China, and of course, the trends affecting US influence in Asia. So this provided an opportunity for India to present itself not as an individual, or not as an individual state that would be used as an offshore balancer by the United States, but a potential great power on its own right, that has the potential to harness its material capabilities, to be able to provide more conducive, more conducive environment for growth, particularly among developing states. And the United States, as I mentioned, structural factors play a huge role, particularly among smaller countries in Southeast Asia, where US accommodation towards India's rise is also seen as a fairly positive catalyst for Southeast Asia to look more positively towards India. And this is a time where India has begun to realize and attempt to really translate its accumulation of material power into pragmatic policies towards the continent. So the post 9/11 era definitely provided significant incentives for both sides to really harness their potential as strategic partners. Now, as I've mentioned, there were a series of pivotal and very positive developments that have taken place throughout this particular period. Now, in 2002, as you can see here, India became a summit-level dialogue partner of ASEAN, joining the ranks of China, South Korea, and Japan. In 2004, both sides signed the ASEAN-India Partnership for Peace, Progress, and Shared Prosperity, which really was a forward-looking roadmap to be able to guide India's Southeast Asian relations towards the potential shifts in the future of geopolitics in the region. And in 2012, the elevation of India-ASEAN relations to a strategic partnership, also indicated the growing importance of India, and of course, the attribution given to India by ASEAN, by Southeast Asian states, because of their convergence of mutual goals and concerns. So these were the pivotal factors that have taken place throughout the post 9/11 era. And this was further catalyzed with the next phase of the establishment of the Act East policy. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has envisioned India to be a great power with significant manufacturing capabilities, a robust economy, and a formidable military. And Southeast Asia gained further prominence, as I've mentioned earlier, in India's strategic calculations. So while the Look East policy, I would like to argue, focused on India's conditions during that particular period, so it was opening up its economy, it was trying to develop its economy significantly, and economic, engagements became the cornerstone of India's engagements with Southeast Asia. However, because of the lack of material capability and diplomatic networks during that particular period, India was not really able to maximize its potential as a robust partner that Southeast Asian states were envisioning. But today, looking into the Act East policy, 2014 onwards, we can definitely say that there is a significant trend and a significantly positive trend when it comes to India's growth, its ability to translate its growth into more pragmatic and proactive foreign policy initiatives, frameworks, and of course, the ability to show itself and demonstrate itself as a leader, not only in the Indian Ocean region, but also throughout the whole Asia and the Pacific, as it was known back then. And, the Act East policy also significantly focused on the level of defense and military cooperation between India and Southeast Asian states. So while the Act East policy, continues to incorporate a lot of the pillars that its predecessor had, the defense and political military angles are seen to be quite emphasized today. And this plays a pivotal role for Southeast Asia as well, at a time when the intensifying power competition between the US and China continues to unfold in Southeast Asia, in the South China Sea, in the Western Pacific. the need, of course, for capacity building, diversification of defense procurements, and of course, the diversification of sources of growth and security and stability, this is the perfect time that India seeks to leverage its material capabilities, its growing material capabilities, to really make a positive impression on Southeast Asian states at a time when the past was marred, of course, with inconsistencies and preoccupation from Southeast Asia to South Asia. And now as India continues to see, and harness and embrace its role as a rising great power, we could definitely see more proactive and active engagements in other regions of the world as well, not only in South Asia or the greater Indian Ocean region, but throughout Asia as well, West, North, Center, and South, East, and East. And this is something that we could see as a positive development, and India's ability, of course, to harness its growing material capabilities. In fact, in the past, while India was growing, it had difficulty. In fact, a lot of scholars have written on this on India, particularly scholars in India who have been tracking, of course, Indian foreign policy for a very long time, have also seen this notice that, India had it quite difficult in the past to really have the perception to harness its material capabilities into leadership. And today, we could definitely see that India is setting that standard, not only as a leader of the developing world or the global South, but also the ability to show the global North, hey, this is how you should engage with the global South, an equal footing. Okay, so it's not North-South anymore, it's North with South. And this is something that Indian leadership has also significantly promoted multilaterally, and of course, through other sub-regional initiatives as well. So, the Act East policy served as an important catalyst, of course, for New Delhi to craft forward-looking, major power-driven policies of external engagement. Now, we have to understand India's rise goes beyond the traditional structural theories that are Western-led. In fact, we have to look not only in material power or the distribution of material power, but also on the role of perception. So India perceives itself as a great power, a rising great power that seeks to work within the established order, but also inject its own characteristics throughout the order. So it's definitely showing, of course, as my distinguished co-panelists in this particular session have mentioned, India's plurality, its ability to really harness democratic development and transpire democratically within its borders, despite the diversions, despite the dynamicism and the variations within. It serves as a perfect model and a perfect leadership example to actually play a more significant role in an Asia that is also very diverse. So India has that first-hand experience of being able to balance diversity, development, and security. And this is, I think, very important for key regional or continental states that do not wish to choose rigid sides, but really act and engage based on convergences of interest. And I think India has, arguably presented itself as one of the most effective models of leadership, particularly in the Eastern Hemisphere and among the developing world as well. So this is something that we have to understand, the reflection of India's willingness to play a bigger and more proactive role as a major stakeholder in the international rules-based order. So along with this, in fact, if we look into key initiatives under the current administration, we look into Sagar, we look into neighborhood first, we look into the extended neighborhood concept, we look into the IPOI, we look at all these things and sub-regional initiatives as well. It's India harnessing its role to really connect, significant regions around the world, significant regions around what we know today as the Indo-Pacific, to really harness a collective stand, but not really to put a uniform or a particular jacket, the way particular major powers or great powers do, but really to harness leadership that is based on understanding and respecting variations among states. And this, I believe, is one of the most significant characteristics of India. and particularly as it leads the G20 this year, we could definitely see that India is operationalizing this very nature of leadership in the international level. Now, the unveiling of the Act East, coincided, of course, with China's increasing assertiveness throughout Asia, not only in the Western Pacific, but also in the Indian Ocean region. Since 2014, there was a more emphasized desire between India and Southeast Asian states to really forge closer strategic relations amid the uncertainty of the future of geopolitics of Asia. So both sides were definitely concerned about the constrainment of US influence and, of course, the assertive rise of China. And it is because of this structural inhibitions, again, that have catalyzed a more responsive take from both sides to really cement and solidify the strategic partnership. So in 2015, a separate Indian mission to ASEAN was established in Jakarta, Indonesia. India also began to focus on security issues, particularly in the South China Sea. Since 2014, India has in fact become more vocal to the concerns of Southeast Asian states. In fact, former External Affairs Minister Sushma Swarajji has in fact mentioned the South China Sea as the West Philippine Sea. And this is very significant because it upholds, of course, the legitimate interests of the Philippines under international law, under UNCLOS. And in fact, this is a major move by India in recognizing the plight of Southeast Asian countries towards an assertive China, and really playing a more proactive role towards the sovereignty and sovereign rights concerns of Southeast Asian states. So, and of course, there was also the improvement of relations between India and Vietnam, the elevation to a comprehensive strategic partnership, and the provision of lines of credit in terms of defense. So this is definitely significant as India seeks to also improve its image as a capacity builder and responsible security provider, not only in the Indian Ocean, but also throughout the Western Pacific as well. So, the momentum has been significant throughout the Act East, but what has really added more positive momentum was the rise of the Indo-Pacific construct. Now, I call it a construct because the Indo-Pacific as a singular strategic region was already in existence in the past 1800s, in the mid-1800s, where major powers utilized the amalgamation of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean and viewed it as one unitary geopolitical region. But the reason why I call it a construct is because the Indo-Pacific represents a vision among like-minded democratic powers, including India, to really play a more pivotal role in safeguarding the order at a time of great peril, where the rise of China and other, of course, notorious factors involved, such as arms races, nuclear proliferation, continue to be a significant factor. And the Indo-Pacific is also, in fact, I would like to argue, a recognition of multipolarity, particularly from the United States. Excuse me. So the thing here is that for the United States, harnessing the Indo-Pacific is in recognition that the US alone would not be able to really provide leverage on its position as a dominant material power against a China that is deepening its political and economic clout at its expense in the Western Pacific. So harnessing, of course, the major powers of both the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, we could definitely say that this is something that needs to be looked into as an indication or an acceptance towards a transitioning multipolar order. So, while the US and China make up two of the most important structural variables impacting Southeast Asia, their desire to safeguard their individual interests, security, and development by not falling deeper into the power competition remains an important objective. And in fact, we can involve India now into the structural dynamics as it continues to rise. India now is the 5th largest economy, the 4th largest in terms of military capabilities, the 2nd most populated country, In fact, I'm not sure of the numbers right now. It could be heading to first. It has a very positive demographic property, the world's largest democracy, as I've mentioned. It has, in fact, the second largest standing army in the world. So these are the things that are catalyzing India's emergence as a rising great power. And in fact, the need to look into this and to provide the India Rise narrative is way overdue. In fact, long overdue. The world has been quite caught up with the rise of China because it provides, it provides fuel to Western-led theories of international politics. The Thucydides trap, Graham Allison, offensive realism, John Mearsheimer. All these factors play a role with the U.S. and China. But the rise of India cannot be negated or ignored anymore because key regional states are looking towards India as an alternative source of growth and security. And as India continues to rise, this will definitely be compounded with its leadership role. And this is significant, particularly for Southeast Asian states that are cornered because of the intensifying US-China power competition. So, the rise of the Indo-Pacific has also catalyzed Indo-Pacific strategies among Southeast Asian states. So the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, for example, which is spearheaded by Indonesia, also went through engagements with Prime Minister Modi before he has really incorporated the Southeast Asian counterparts towards envisioning an ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. In fact, Southeast Asian states were quite wary in the past about incorporating an Indo-Pacific strategy because of its geopolitical repercussions. However, we could definitely say that as the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific has risen, its convergence with India's own strategy for the Indo-Pacific, the IPOI, is definitely significant. And the convergence will continue to deepen as the structural shifts continue to shape. So, and this is also seen through the elevation of relations between India and ASEAN early this year with the elevation towards a comprehensive strategic partnership from strategic partnership. So India's recognition, of course, as a comprehensive strategic partner, the highest ranking attribution of partnerships in ASEAN, is seen, of course, as a very positive sign and a welcoming sign. And India has also played a significant role as a capacity builder for Southeast Asian states such as the Philippines, Myanmar, providing Myanmar with its first submarine, the Philippines with the BrahMos missile, and of course there are talks up to this very day of venturing into other defense engagements between the Philippines and India. And of course Vietnam, which is considered to be a very important pillar in India's Act East policy, also continues to solidify. Raksha Mantri Ji Rajnath Singh was there to deliver speedboats that were part of the line of credit that was offered to Vietnam. So these areas of capacity building, and in fact, India and Indonesia now are also looking towards bolstering their defense partnership. And in fact, just a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, in 2018, India and Indonesia unveiled their first bilateral naval exercise as well, which also had a war-fighting dimension involved. So this is in stark contrast. In fact, in the late 1990s, when Indonesia looked at India with great wariness because of its false perception towards India and the Soviet Union as a harbinger of communist ideology to the Western Pacific. Today, India is seen very proactively and positively by Jakarta. And in fact, for the first time in the past few months, rather the past few weeks, India docked its submarine in Jakarta, which is the first time India docked a submarine. And this is symbolic and operational at the same time, because the submarine, of course, demonstrates in the Indian Navy's operational reach in the Western Pacific, its ability to really project power into the Western Pacific Ocean. And this is welcomed by key Southeast Asian states such as Indonesia, which is often considered to be the de facto leader of ASEAN. So these are seen to be very promising developments, particularly between and among India and Southeast Asian states. And of course, the acknowledgement of India's political maturity, as I'd like to argue, particularly India's position amid the unfolding situation between Russia and Ukraine and Eastern Europe. India's very mature, politically mature, proactive, and people-centric position is very much well received across Southeast Asia, where I am based in the Philippines. Manila looks positively towards India as a responsible and mature partner. And this, I believe, is more than enough proof of India's growing and positively growing image in Southeast Asia. However, we should not be too complacent. There are still particular gaps that need to be ironed out for India to really maximize its position and its partnership with Southeast Asia. So this is my last slide. Now, if we look into the State of Southeast Asia Survey 2022, it is in fact very significant. It highlighted some concerns towards India. So while 37.1% of respondents believe that India is a responsible stakeholder of the rules-based order, there's a significant percentage that believes that India might not have the political will to maintain its presence in Southeast Asia because of its preoccupation towards South Asia. Now, this is understandable, such as because of the past, India was quite inconsistent in its approach towards Southeast Asia. But come 2014, we could definitely see more consistency, rather an improved consistency towards Southeast Asia. So hopefully, as we look into such surveys, we could definitely see that the improvement will continue to foster. And of course, areas of regional economic cooperation is also another sticking point between India and ASEAN and Southeast Asia. But India has made it clear, External Affairs Minister Dr. Shashank has made it clear that India will continue to cooperate economically with ASEAN beyond RCEP. So the need to really look sub-regionally to maximize such partnerships would be crucial. So for India, it has a very good conducive foundation now, and it has to maintain that level of proactive consistency to be able to harness and maximize its strategic partnership with South Asia, as rather Southeast Asia even further. So I would like to end my particular discussion there. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, sir. I'm sure everyone here loved listening to you. It was extremely enriching. And we would quickly like to move on to a few questions. I see a few questions in the Q&A chat box. We have one, Olza's, could you please ask your question? Right, so I'm just going to read out the question. One is by Sneha Saraju. They're asking, will India be given a permanent seat at UNSC with its footprint spread globally at these times, like that of dealing the COVID and even having a stable economy at the present time than other developed countries?
Right. So the UNSC, a very important question, and in fact, a resounding question. We have to understand that barring China and Pakistan to a certain degree, the rest of the world recognizes India as a much needed addition to the international leadership of powers, particularly in the UNSC. However, it is not only a matter of perspective, but of course, looking into the procedures of the United Nations, how new permanent members are chosen. We have to understand that there is a particular gap here because of the role of China and its veto powers. And of course, China would not want to incorporate India in the UNSC for obvious reasons. So this is the only procedural impediment I believe that India has and continues to have from achieving the UNSC seat. However, we must look beyond the UNSC when we talk about Indian leadership. As we can see, the loopholes and gaps and inconsistencies of the UN, India has managed to project its leadership beyond the UN. And we must continue to harness this particular leadership role. While I believe that because of the symbolic nature of the UNSC, it is definitely pivotal for a rising great power of such caliber to be part. However, we cannot discount the fact that there are procedural limitations for that matter.
Right. Thank you, sir. There's another question. They're asking, what is the alternative policy / vision of India to China's RBI initiative? BRI initiative, sorry.
Right. We have to understand that the BRI comes at a time when there is a significant infrastructure deficit in the developing world. That's one. Second, however, the BRI is only attractive because it has a somewhat no strings attached connotation at first, until you get caught up and you'd have to cede particular areas of sovereignty, as we all know about the debt trap and all that. But however, we have to look into the negative effects of the BRI because of the lack of understanding of macroeconomic stability. The BRI is in fact lending and investing and providing loans to countries with negative or zero credit ratings. And this adds to their burden more than it does solve their problems of infrastructure deficits. Now, the problem is that there is still no robust and viable alternative to the BRI up to this very point. If you remember the words of Dr. Robert Kaplan, China's empire would only be attractive, it will remain attractive until a significant alternative comes out. We looked into the G7 churning out initiative after initiative, 4 or 5 already, but they've all been limited because of internal bureaucratic hurdles. Now, India can play a pivotal role. It has tried with Japan, for example, the AAGC, the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. Unfortunately, it did not take off because of, again, the limitations. So this is a problem when you're dealing with a democratically laden process. There are bound to be particular limitations in cooperation. So what I'd like to argue is that we should not, particularly India, should not look into the BRI and challenge the BRI on a project per project basis and a loan per loan basis, rather to be able to harness its practical advantages over China and use that as a value added for its engagements. And of course, to partner with like-minded practical states. France is looking greatly towards India and collaborating. Japan, for example, we can look into the Japan-Australia India initiative as well. And in fact, the lack of attention towards the Indian Ocean by Quad countries such as the US, Australia, also creates problems in harnessing a collective approach against the BRI. So these are the things that we have to look into first before harnessing a potential to really serve as an alternative to the BRI.
Right. There are 2 more questions. Pratista ji, would you like to ask a question?
Yes. So my question was regarding that why the China's plan for reinventing Silk Route is not seen as a strategic advantage with potential, like for New Delhi, because we can be a partner with them for regional cooperation, as you have mentioned before, and why it is treated as a challenge or maybe a point of disharmony in South Asia region.
Sir, I'm so sorry to interrupt. So there's one more question. Would you like to take it as well and you can answer them together?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for the purpose of time, we can do that.
Amrita ji, could you ask your question, please? Right. If I may just read it out. Amrita ji is asking, request your views on how did ASEAN nations perceive India's walkout of RCEP agreement, and should India revisit its decision on joining RCEP given the global and regional developments since 2019?
Right, thank you. So I'll just, compound the questions and answer it briefly. The first question regarding the potential and why India does not seek to work with China for regional harmony, we have to understand that India has, on several occasions, extended the flower of peace to China, but unfortunately, China does not respect India's territorial integrity. In fact, the BRI, for that matter, runs through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. And China does not have any reservations about that and continues to engage on that matter at the expense of India's territorial integrity. Second to that, China has also not been able to follow through with its commitments in the 1990s, agreements that were agreed upon between New Delhi and Beijing. As we can see, the altercation in the LAC, the incursions by China are another point towards that consideration. And it's not only China, in fact, it's not only India rather, but there are several factors and several reports, of course, of Chinese activity in Bhutan, in Nepal, that also continue to alter the security architecture of South Asia negatively. So, we have to understand that India has several occasions presented itself as a willing partner of China to really spearhead growth. However, there is a huge discrepancy between what China says at the political level and what it does on the ground. And I think we have learned our lessons on several occasions. We remain open to our diplomatic networks and communication, but I believe we would not want to be fooled several times more with what has been happening. So we're being very proactive at that. We're meeting at the senior level, at the diplomatic level, but we have to be very pragmatic about what we seek to do in terms of engagement and cooperation. On the second question, we look into ASEAN. It is true that India's withdrawal from the RCEP final agreement was seen as a sort of a negative thing, not really negative, but a disappointment for ASEAN that really sought to harness a really expansive agreement such as RCEP, and India's role with its vast market, population, material capabilities would have been a very significant factor for the development of RCEP. However, again, realistically speaking, India has also to look into its own small and medium enterprises, and India has to empower them, because India's primary interest would be towards its people, towards its own development. And India has again extended the initiation to really go beyond RCEP, because there are factors in RCEP that would limit India's ability to really empower its small and medium enterprises. And that would, I think, be very unfair to our people and our hardworking small and medium enterprises as well. So we are looking to more practical engagements with ASEAN, with Southeast Asian states at sub-regional level, economically speaking, and this has been well received. There are initiatives in the pipeline between India and key Southeast Asian states, and we just have to communicate and engage with them more. But again, we have to balance practicality with our projection of leadership as well. And I think this is what has kept India safe from being embroiled in a number of international issues that have really brought in developing states deeper into their particular orbit. So I think that we must maintain proactivity and practicality in spearheading our development and our leadership initiatives.
Right, thank you so much, sir. I don't think we have any more questions.
That's
right. We do have one last question.
Okay, sure.
Oljas, Ji, if I'm pronouncing your name correct, would you please ask your question? Or if you can hear me. Right. Yes.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you everybody for this session and the opportunity to discuss and to know more on the Indian foreign policy as with regards to the main topic. So regardless of the BRI initiative, so my question is, what is the vision, let's say, or proposal of India with regards to the infrastructure development in the neighboring countries or region within the foreign direct investment toolkit or instruments, I would say?
Right, thank you. And we have to understand first, in comparing India's potential against the BRI, for example, we have to be realistic in noting that there's a huge discrepancy of material capabilities between India and China. But this does not mean that India would not be able to forward its own initiatives as well throughout the region. And India has been focused on more people-centric approaches towards investment. In fact, India's investment towards South Asia, and in fact, it has also been increasing its infrastructural footprints in Southeast Asia to a limited degree, as Japan still holds leadership in infrastructure investments in Southeast Asia. India has been noted for its people-centric approach, so not really more on flashy mega projects, but really more towards socio-economic and of course sustainable projects, similar to what Japan has been doing. But however, what sets it apart from the BRI is because the manner in which it would be done. So as we can see that there are countries throughout Africa, toward Western Indian Ocean, that have been seeking to push back on key BRI initiatives. However, because of the lack of alternative towards the BRI, these countries are left with limited to no options. I've mentioned there were several impediments towards providing an alternative. The AAGC would have been a very significant step for infrastructural development between India and Japan. But again, the bureaucratic hurdles continue to limit them as well. So to be able to have a more designated alternative, the need for a practical solution between and among like-minded powers will be the way forward. But again, we have seen how this is difficult. We have seen this for several years, in fact, to really harness a collective approach for infrastructure. So it's not that there is no space for competition. The infrastructural gap is still quite large in the developing world. But again, the inability to harness a collective approach is the problem that we see for a proper alternative.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. I think that would suffice for all the participants here and all the questions that we have. With this, we come to the end of the day one of this 3-day immersive online certificate training course on India's G20 presidency and the contours of India's foreign policy. I would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI Center for International Relations and Strategic Studies, CIRSS. We are grateful to all our experts for the first day of this online certificate training program, Dr. Parama Sinha Palit, Professor Annapurna Nautiyal, and Mr. Don McLean Gill. And also to our convener and the moderator, Dr. Simi Mehta, for moderating this session. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and have actively participated in today's deliberations and have asked pertinent questions as well. We look forward to welcoming you tomorrow, where we will be joined by distinguished experts, Ambassador Shashank, Ms. Nandita Barua, and Captain Alok Bansal. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our podcasts, or if you're reading our publications. We hope you continue joining us in the future in our web policy talks and web policy learning. With this, I wish you all a good evening. Thank you so much.